Welcome back to another high-level match of StarCraft 2. What I've got for you today is the grand finals of the ESL Open Cup, a 156 for the European server, and that means that these games, they are played with the new multiplayer balance patch. As a matter of fact, this is an updated version of the multiplayer balance patch. I'll talk about the Terran changes here in just a moment. First off, let's introduce the players. Game number 1 in this Best-of-5 series. It takes place on the map Tropical Sacrifice. Spawning right here in the top right-hand corner. Playing with the red SCVs. From Germany, we have HeroMarine. And his opponent in the opposite corner, from the Netherlands, playing with the blue SCVs. We're looking at uThermal's main command center. Alrighty, so before this game gets underway, let me try and explain what the updated patch notes are all about. So, it turns out we are currently on the 1.7 edition of the new balance changes. Remember a couple of casts ago when I mentioned that the Hydralisk didn't seem as fast anymore and that maybe I'd already gotten used to them? Turns out they actually changed the Hydralisk movement speed and I didn't know. It's been quite tricky to stay up to date on all of these changes, but I've tried my best to figure out exactly what is adjusted for Terran versus Terran. So, one of the units that got a significant rework is, of course, the Raven. The Raven, we see it used primarily in TVT, not so often in TVP and in TVZ. I mean, sometimes to clear creep, sometimes to disable Colossi, but in general, the Raven, very much so a Terran versus Terran specialty unit. Now, the idea, I guess, is to make it a little bit more useful in the other matchups as well, but we'll see how impactful it's really going to be for TVT. So, the initial rework, so the rework got reworked, okay? So, the initial rework of the Raven was to make the auto turret weaker. So, the auto turret went from 50 energy to 75 energy, meaning that at max energy, you can only have 2 of them on a Raven. However, the starting energy of the Raven was also increased from 50 to 75, so you could once again start the game with enough energy, or start, I guess, when a unit spawns, with enough energy to also pop down an auto turret. That apparently got reworked, so the auto turret itself got made weaker, but the Raven once again spawns with 50 energy, and the auto turret is once again 50 energy as well to cast. So, same idea, just a little bit different. So the way that it now works out in the current version of the new multiplayer balance patch is that the auto turret's duration is reduced from 10 to 7.8 seconds, the auto turret health has been reduced from 150 to 100, the auto turret armor is reduced from 1 to 0, and the auto turret is no longer affected by Neo Steel armor. Essentially meaning that it's not quite as tanky, it's going to be much easier to kill, but overall, it will still do a lot of damage if you don't respond. On top of that, the Raven also got an additional change. The anti-armor's missile tint color is now brighter. So, I'm hoping that we're going to see one of those anti-armor missiles in this particular series as well, so we can actually see what the color looks like. From what I understand, it's less of like a Dorito orange and more of like a, I don't know, a yellowish. I don't know, we're going to have to come up, a cheese yellow? No, I don't know. We're going to have to come up with a color once we see it, or if we see it. But yeah, that is apparently a change. Kind of a small one. Anti-armor missile armor reduction, though, is also reduced from 3 to 2. So that is quite significant there. So definitely not as powerful as it once was. The Corvid reactor upgrade is removed as well for the Raven. So that is the energy improvement upgrade, and that one is no longer around. And then the build time of the unit, and that's a big one. Do we have a, yeah. Mark, make one. Are you gonna make one? Yeah. Okay, so the build time has been reduced from 42.9 to 30 seconds. So if everything goes according to plan, this guy should be building a little bit quicker. And then the gas cost is also reduced from 200 to 150. That's a long list of changes. But the idea is that you can produce these a little bit easier. You're not going to take as much of a early game economical hit by making this. You're going to be able to get it out a little bit quicker as well. But it's going to be slightly weaker than it used to be. However, the auto turret, I mean, it will only die quicker. It's still going to be able to dish out a lot of damage. Matter of fact, drop right now coming across the map. There's a lot more changes I want to discuss, actually. But I guess we have to, you know, look at the game as well. Hellions right now driving straight across. They did spot the Metafic drop. I would imagine that HeroMarine also did see that his opponent managed to, well, drive those Hellions across. I mean, he flew a Metafic by them. You'd imagine so, but he does still take a whole lot of damage. At the same time, though, he's dealing a bunch of damage on the other side of the map. There's one of those auto turrets. Yeah, seems to die pretty quickly, although, well, if the Cyclone gets picked up... Wait, yeah, okay, I was gonna say, it did get picked up, right? It is gonna, well, still, yeah, be taken care of eventually, I guess, but it's not gonna die because of the auto turret, or sorry, of the Cyclone missiles. There's another auto turret. Siege tank pops out of the factory as well, and I think that is going to be enough to deflect HeroMarine's push. Well, he's got more units, well, heading across the map right now. And he's actually looking to pile on the pressure. So since that auto turret energy was just used, interference matrix, which did not get changed, it's, yeah, not available right now for those two ravens. Well, if you just walk into that range of the siege tank, though, I don't know if that's necessarily the best call. Okay. Can I discuss some more of the changes? So we, of course, have the radar range of the sensor tower that's been reduced. That is unchanged. From 30 range to 27 range. The Cyclone will now have a lock-on that prioritizes air units if they have an anti-ground attack. So that is an additional change that wasn't in the initial set of changes, meaning that the Cyclone is hopefully not going to be as pointless, especially in the Terran versus Zerg mid-game, because sometimes it would just lock on to a bunch of, I don't know, Locust or a bunch of Zerglings or whatever. Complete waste. Yeah, this would hopefully make that a little bit more useful. Not necessarily that helpful, I don't think, for the TVT matchup, but we might see it come into play. Mag field accelerated damage, so that is the upgrade to make the Cyclone a little bit more powerful. That one is changed from +20 versus armored to +10 versus all. So that is what we originally had in the original list of changes as well. HeroMarine, by the way, continuously pushing. He's brought his own ravens to the front right now, too. That was cheeky. Couple of Reapers still inside of that medevac, just throwing grenades and then getting picked up again. You love to see it. Vikings moving forward right now. Okay, speaking of Vikings, their damage point has been reduced from 0.12 to 0.04. I believe that makes them a little bit more microable, and therefore you can stutter step with them a little bit easier. Okay, now the auto turrets are being dropped down on both sides. Looks like Raven are still pretty good in this matchup, huh? I mean, they certainly do die pretty quick here. That armor reduction, I think, is noticeable here. So it's 1 less armor and 50 less life. Okay, yeah, so from 150 to 100 HP. That definitely adds up. Okay, well, still HeroMarine finding himself in a rather strong position here. It's difficult to break sieged up tanks. But yeah, as long as the majority of those ravens are up in the air, I think it's going to be difficult for Mark to be broken here. That said, HeroMarine looking very solid so far in this particular game. One last change, actually, before I forget, that was not in the original set of changes, is that the Liberator cost has been reduced from 150, so 150 minerals and 150 gas. It's been reduced to 125. So I think that's primarily to make up for the Ghost nerf. So the Ghost is a little bit weaker, EMP not as powerful as it once was. At the very least, the radius has been reduced and the enhanced Shockwaves upgrade has been removed. Steady targeting can now be manually cancelled, but it will also be cancelled if units run out of range. Primarily, once again, for Terran versus Zerg, that one, but yeah. I wonder if Liberators are obviously very popular in this matchup as well. I wonder how much of a change that's really going to be, so they're a little bit cheaper. Not that Terrans usually are starving for gas, but still. Very brave move right here by Jimmy. Look at him. Jimmy does not mess up. Okay, well, he's no longer messing around at all. Poor guy. Poor guy. So far, yeah, uThermal has been trying his best to break this contain, but it's not happening. So he's deciding right now to send a couple of medevacs full of units to watch the other side of the map. That is a dangerous move. Maybe this is something, though, that HeroMarine has picked up on right now as well, as he decides to also turn around. One Marine here, scouting, trying to see if there's anything fancy happening here. And luckily here for Mark, at least he did not get spotted, but uThermal is going to have to be very careful, because now there's a huge Terran army over here. Okay, he stims one of the Marines in that direction. He notices exactly where that army is located. Couple of the tanks siege up, but this is now going to be an all-out push here from uThermal. He does not have a third command center. What he does have, however, is 71 army supply versus only 50-something right here for HeroMarine. Decides to siege up on the ramp. I wonder if he should move a little bit further forward. Auto turrets over there as well. Okay, trying their very best, but they get absolutely shredded. Wouldn't be surprised if the early game meta is going to change a little bit to not be so reliant on those. Okay, yeah, GG is just simply cool. But I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to change their early game up a little bit to not be so reliant on the Raven. All right, so real quick summary. The fighter mode version of the Viking, so the flying version of the Viking, is going to be slightly more microable. The Liberator has its gas cost reduced by 25. The Ghost has the EMP change, as well as the steady targeting change. The Banshee, and I don't think I've mentioned that one yet, it is still not used in any of the games that I've casted. I've really been trying, but I haven't seen anyone try out the Banshee play. So the Hyperflight Rotors Research is a little bit faster and 25 minerals and 25 gas cheaper. So would be cool to see that. The Cyclone is hopefully going to be a little bit more useful, especially in the mid-game, rather than just being an early game, well, one-off type of unit. Sensor Tower range reduced for 10%, and then that Raven rework to make the auto turret a little bit weaker overall, the anti-armor missile a little bit weaker overall, but the unit is also quicker to produce and a little bit cheaper. I think that's it. I think that's it. Okay, good. We're only a minute into game 2. Let's actually have a look at the game this time around. Yeah, well, I think the previous game was pretty self-explanatory, so we didn't really have to go too deep. Both players opening up with a double refinery start right here on Moondance. This is something that we've seen many times before in a Terran versus Terran matchup. Nothing out of the ordinary whatsoever. Of course, they could have waved at each other. Of course, this allows you to go straight into a quick factory and then also usually a quick starport. The one downside, however, of this build is that you cannot go for an expansion nearly as quickly, just because you have so many SCVs dedicated to gas mining, and with that, you're obviously not mining minerals at the same time with that same SCV. So I'm expecting factories here to come up very shortly for the both of them. There's factory for HeroMarine. There's the factory on the other side of the map as well here for uThermal. Very confusing, by the way, that he's playing under the nickname of Mark. I mean, he's been playing... I mean, that's his name, right? But he's been playing under so many IDs over the years that... I guess uThermal is one... I haven't even seen him play under his original nickname in a very long time. When's the last time you've seen him play under the ID uThermal? I remember at some point he joined Liquid, and I believe the start of this whole problem was that Liquid uThermal was too long for the StarCraft 2 character limit. So I think he made it Liquid Thermi, just because that's one character shorter, and then from there it became an absolute disaster of a nickname problem. Not a huge deal, of course, but definitely does make, especially when you're like you know, like when you're casting a, well, you might not know because you may have never casted a game before, but when you're casting a game, sometimes you go into these autopilot modes, right, where you start talking about one of the players and then you glance at the bottom and you're like, okay, yeah, this is relevant to that player. And then, you know, you read the nickname over here and then you're like, oh no, it's actually you. Anyway, it doesn't really matter all too much. Just means I have to focus a little bit more rather than just sitting back, relaxing, and talking about unrelated stuff. Speaking of unrelated stuff, found a screw in my back tire today. Had to drop off my car at the garage. It was actually fine. It was actually fine. I have no idea how long it's been in there, but from what I understand, they can probably just fix the tire, because the tires are only like 6,000-7,000 kilometers old at this point, which would kind of suck. Right, to be forced to replace them again. Ooh, that'd be great. There you go. There's my unrelated story for today. We've got ourselves some starports over here as well, for both of them right now. Can expect tech labs here. Yep, there it is. Tech lab for HeroMarine. And I wouldn't be surprised as well to see one on the other side of the map. We even see two on the other side of the map, as well as on the side of HeroMarine. Not bad at all. Okay, so pretty much identical situation here for both of them, although there are more Reapers available for uThermal. I say that, but more additional Reapers now also have joined the middle of the map here for HeroMarine. Obviously, the high ground advantage here is absolutely massive, so that's why uThermal is driving around that side. Hellions dealing splash damage in the line, also not to be underestimated. You cannot drive into that concave. I mean, you can try. Yeah, those grenades make this super tricky as well, so you gotta micro your heart out. uThermal, always known to be very good at his early game unit control. I mean, in general, his unit control is really sick, but especially the early game Reapers always seem to go well for him. In the end, a little bit of an advantage right now for the Dutchman, but nothing all too crazy. Second starport coming up here as well for uThermal. Okay, well, we'll have to see what he decides to do with that. Raven's coming up, though, for the both of them. So despite the fact that they are weaker and a little bit cheaper, I guess that kind of makes up for it, right? You can make them a little bit easier. They're still helpful. They're still really good for that base defense. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point the early game matchup and the early game build order will pivot away from this, but it makes a lot of sense that players are still making them right now. Maybe at some point someone will come up with something that is gonna be a correct counter against this sort of shenanigans. If you could get away with less gas mining, that would be quite nice. Anyways, HeroMarine, Big Gape, looking for a... He's never changed his nickname, by the way. Like, HeroMarine is the man with many nicknames, but for some reason, the biggest of Gapes still just true to his name, although he did stop capitalizing his nickname in that weird way that he used to do back in the day. I remember this because I would, well, title my YouTube videos. It would always be a little bit confusing. He's now waiting behind the tall grass. Okay, does get a lock on right there. Cyclone huge, but uThermal actually driving through the tall grass there, through the side blockers. Not really grass, more like LEDs right here from the ground. Anyways, driving through that, losing the lock on. He should be okay. Yeah, it used to be, it was something like this. But then, you know, he would like alternate letters, but then at the end he had like an odd amount of letters, so he like capitalized the E and there were like 2 lowercase ones. So it was a disaster, okay? I'm very glad that like a year or 2 ago, HeroMarine decided to update his nickname to just have a capital H and a capital... It looks way better. It looks way better. Okay. So even though the players have been flirting with each other over here in the middle of the map, neither of them really wanted to fight there, right? They're just dancing, they're just texting one another. It's like, what are you up to right now? Not much, just driving through the LED strips, that sort of thing. They're just chilling, right? They're just having a good time. That does mean that both of them get to build up. So we do have a little bit of a different build up, as uThermal is going for the Viking opener that we've seen a bunch before. And HeroMarine is actually the one thinking about being aggressive. I don't know if that's necessarily the best call, because he did invest into a 3rd command center already, and uThermal did not. There's the interference matrices that now allows uThermal to siege up the tanks. Can he retarget them over there? Yeah, he sure can. That's going to be very helpful. Now with the Vikings up in the air, this is going to be a whole lot nicer here for uThermal, who ends up dealing a ton of damage to his opponent's tanks. And the siege tank count is critical at this point in the game. Did he lose? Yeah, he lost 2 Ravens here. That's actually very painful as well. It's a big advantage of this Viking opener. Now uThermal can start pushing his siege tank a little bit closer. Yeah, sieging them up over here. And what exactly are you going to do about it? Okay, Raven go... Ooh, no, Raven does not go down. How in the world did that Raven not go down? No idea. Anyways, it's going to get repaired back up to full HP. Siege tank not in the right place. I mean, siege tank producer facility. I think that's what we call it. Not in the right place. He tries to land it. Since the Vikings do deal bonus damage against mechanical, it might be nice to see them hitting the factory for a bit, but... As long as there's SCVs to repair, I guess the siege tank production can continue. 3rd CC in the meantime on the other side of the map as well. That's an interesting siege up location here. Guess he's really concerned for a counterattack, but... Don't think HeroMarine really has that luxury here. He's been trying to trickle out a couple of his Vikings himself as well, but still an uphill battle. Liberators are now already out as well here for uThermal, so 25 gas cheaper on each of those. And that's the nice transition, of course, you can go for after opening up with these many, many Vikings. Once the Liberators are here, you can start forcing these siege tanks of the opponent to unsiege. Life gets a whole lot nicer. And with the siege tanks in blue moving forward once again, the Liberator's gonna unsiege and move a little bit forward. It's a leapfrogging movement, right? It's cool to see when microed correctly. I love that cheeky little Cyclone. Woo! Beautiful control, man. I haven't casted a lot of... Okay, I haven't casted a lot of uThermal games lately, but the man's got some micro. Love to see it. I mean, his nickname is Mark J, but his clan tag is Storm G, right? I think that's probably a reference to Stormgate. Maybe that is what uThermal is waiting for here. I know he's been very busy with YouTube and all that actually as well, but it'd be sick to see if he can get some damage done. There's, by the way, look at that! Ooh, that is a way nicer color. Sorry, HeroMarine is destroying his opponent's Vikings. That color was way nicer. That looked way more sophisticated, that like bright orange. Okay, you know what? I thought it was a bit of a silly change, but I'm a fan. That looked great. Anyways, very impressive hold right there from Big Gape. Slowly building these Vikings up. And then eventually, when his opponent transitioned towards those Liberators, he managed to catch up and With an anti-armor missile, even push them back as well. In the meantime, though, uThermal has been spending his money. What's that portrait? Is that a Diablo portrait? I guess so. Anyways, he's been spending his money on an additional command center right now, so same can be said for HeroMarine, who's been hiding that one in the main base for a little while. Fusion core coming up here for HeroMarine. Okay. So I guess with his own double, yeah, with his own even triple starport production. Okay. Yeah, he's been producing so many Vikings that he's feeling pretty good about a transition as well towards his own Liberators. Not a bad idea. Enhanced Shockwaves is still there. Okay, well, that's a very ambitious lib. But at the very least, uThermal right there did see that his opponent went for a fusion core pretty much as quickly as he could have. So he immediately restarts his own Viking production as well. I can imagine that we're probably going to be a similar unit coming out of... Ooh, look at my UI. There you go. In the bottom right corner, we couldn't see exactly what was started up there, but... Yeah, he does start up his own Viking production right there in the second starport as well. Oh, would you look at that, actually? Okay. So, the biggest of Gapes going for the biggest of ships. While still making Vikings. The age for the Viking is over, I believe. Yes, Battlecruisers are gonna be coming up. Alright. Mark has been making a name for himself as the Battlecruiser guy lately, but apparently it is HeroMarine who's gonna be bringing the big guns out. Additional starports now finishing up as well instead of the main base here of the Dutchman. But already, HeroMarine, he's got a lot of money, he's getting a ton of income. And because of that, apparently he feels rich enough to start producing one of those. They're really expensive. I know I reiterate every time that we have Battlecruisers that these guys are 400 minerals, 300 gas each. But like, as a Zerg player, at least I don't realize that they're that expensive. They're actually stupid expensive. They're like a command center worth plus 300 gas. It is such an insane amount of money. Pretty much every single time you want other units rather than Battlecruisers, but maybe they can work out. I mean, the Viking count is still massive. It's of course going to be an all-out air battle here, right? Because the opponent is also in the meantime making tons and tons of Vikings. You would imagine that Battlecruisers are pretty good in air-to-air. Especially, okay, when they get a couple of those upgrades going. We now also have double armory happening on the other side of the map. It's funny because both of these players are playing a very different game, but in the end they end up, yeah, in a similar position. I'm assuming this is going to be for all air upgrades right now. Yep, there it is. So armor as well as attack. Not bad at all. I think the BCs are still unscouted, right? I mean, he did see the fusion core. Maybe he did assume. uThermal obviously very knowledgeable here. Maybe he did assume it could be a BC transition. Yeah, I think so. Anyways, Liberators are very popular in this matchup, especially with the new patch, right? He still hasn't shown them, by the way. Where are the Battlecruisers? Is this the only two of them for now? Dude, they take so long to produce as well, my god. He's been making them for minutes and there's only two. Anyhow, at this point, uThermal has not seen them yet. He's just scanning, he's looking at his opponent, the amount of units that they've currently got up in the air. The Viking count, that is. It's a lot of siege tanks. Okay, so 29 Vikings in blue, 25 Vikings in red. However, on top of that, we've got 4 Battlecruisers. A Raven is coming up too. I think anti-armor missile is still going to be super helpful. These units clump up so much. Anti-armor missile can still change everything, man. Especially now with its much more sophisticated color. Not bad at all. Here we go. This is apparently the moment where we're engaging. The Battlecruisers immediately nullifying 4 of those Vikings of the opponent with those Yamato guns. And right now they're going forward as well, tanking a ton of the damage. 1-1 is not finished for either of the two players, but I mean, now the Vikings, yeah, they are allowing, I guess, the siege tanks to get destroyed. I mean, they are trying their best to get as much value as possible, but uThermal, he ends up getting destroyed here by a landslide. Love the Vikings as well, landing there just for a second. Picking up 1 more of those tanks. 3 more BCs just about to pop. +1/+1, just about to finish up. Bottom left-hand corner also acquired here by Big Gabe, who is looking very solid so far in this series. I mean, honestly, that hold that he had in the earlier stages of this game, really sick. Now there's also a Raven in the mix. Anti-armor missile, I think it's still going to be fantastic, no? Am I crazy? I mean, it's maybe a little bit less strong as it used to be, but still certainly nice to have. -2 armor on all of the units that are affected. Not bad at all. Okay. There we go. Look at the color. That is a nice color, isn't it? You can at least kind of still see that they're blue, which is nice. Anyways, I would imagine here that there's not even remotely enough, even though the Battlecruisers are sleeping on the job. I don't think there's really enough here for uThermal to hold on. Siege tanks right now in range as well of the planetary fortress. A couple of the BCs have gone down, but as long as a couple of them are still available here, it's not too bad, right? SCV is getting absolutely destroyed. Siege tank says, get out of the way, as he rolls over the carcass right there of one of those, but... yeah, this is going from bad to worse right now for uThermal. Scan up north as well confirms that that base is not taken yet, and that's a good moment here when you're HeroMarine. You expected maybe, just maybe, there's already that base taken at the 12 o'clock position. Oh, it's not? Okay then. That works out just fine for me. If you look right here at the income advantage, over the last 10 minutes, HeroMarine has been significantly ahead, and because of that, he's just simply got a lot more stuff. 2-2 has immediately started up. Same thing is happening on the other side of the map, but this is now an uphill battle. And this is where mirror matchups are super tricky, right? I mean, when you're both making the same units, when your opponent has better upgrades, better economy, and better art, like, what do you do? There's not a whole lot you can do. I mean, that goes for pretty much any matchup. In Protoss versus Protoss, you could still cross your fingers and hope for the sickest Disruptor Nova, but... right now, it is HeroMarine's game to lose. If he is, yeah, if he's gonna mess up, then maybe there's a chance, but... there's more anti-armor missiles. There it is. GG. Next up, inside and out. Both players once again have opted to go for a double gas opener. With that, a quick factory as well, once again on both sides of the map. I'm actually a little bit surprised by the anti-armor missiles color change. I was making fun of that on stream for a couple of days, because I really think it was not going to be interesting at all, but actually quite significant. That was a very nice change. Sometimes, right, at least way back in the past, aka last week, sometimes it was difficult to determine what units were even really affected by it. I mean, not so much what units are affected by it because they were orange, very easy to spot, but whose units were affected by it. Especially in a mirror matchup, sometimes everything was orange, and then it's difficult to figure out, wait, is that my Viking clump? Like, who? Hold up right now. And it seems that with the new colors, you can still actually see who they belong to, which is kind of nice. Yeah. Also, by the way, and I'll probably make a follow-up video about that, if I haven't already by the time you're watching this video. I'm not exactly sure when I'll be publishing this, but anyways. There are 7 new maps available for StarCraft 2. They've been determined. They're not necessarily the ones I would have chosen, but, you know, what do I know? Anyhow, I've casted, of course, a lot of the games from the Team Liquid map contest a couple of months ago. And even though I think the winner of that particular tournament wasn't even, chosen as one of the maps for the next map pool, which is kind of interesting. But I will definitely make sure to cover that in an upcoming video as well. I mean, I'll probably be casting thousands of games on those new maps because they'll probably be around for like half a year. So if you aren't subscribed already, make sure you do so you get notified as soon as future videos go live. But what I'm trying to get at is that this is a pretty exciting time to be a StarCraft fan. Not only do we have the World Championships coming up very soon, we've got a new map pool, we've got a new multiplayer balance patch. I mean, it's gonna be fun. Should be interesting. Okay, so uThermal, well, he has to win this game. He no longer has a chance. If he, well, he can no longer take a chance, rather. He could put all of his eggs in one basket and try his very best to obtain the victory with a cheesy little opener. But HeroMarine seems incredibly solid so far. That attack in the previous game, when he was up with his back against the wall, he did not really seem all too concerned and he knew exactly how to respond. In this game, he's gonna go for a pretty quick third command center as well. Last time, or last game, that did not really push him in too defensive of a spot. Although, well, that fight in the middle of the map did not go particularly great for him. Still 3 Ravens here on the side of uThermal, who decides to, rather than go for a 3rd command center of his own, he decides to spend that money on additional barracks. So I'm fully expecting him to be the aggressor here momentarily once again. He's going to be able to pump out way more units than the opponent. HeroMarine, okay. Bringing a cheeky little Widow Mine. There's of course a chance that uThermal is going to be driving his Hellions over here. But there's also a chance that a little bit later on into the game, those Ravens are going to get close to that section of the map. They're currently waiting here on the right side to see if maybe there's going to be a flying unit. Maybe filled with a couple of Widow Mines, right? Heading on over towards that mineral line. None of that is happening in this particular case, but uThermal just, well, crossing his T's, dotting his I's, making sure that he is A-okay against whatever it is that HeroMarine could be throwing at him right now. Okay. All army hotkey. Everybody to the front. It's time to go. Sorry, Jimmy. Not you. My god. What even happened there, man? How did you... You were wearing a suit. How did we go from... He's gone. You happy now, dude? Anyhow. Raven's not close enough. But that doesn't really matter all too much. They're thinking about taking revenge right there on Jimmy. Although HeroMarine does indeed see that there's a group of Ravens there too. Are we going to elevate them past the rocks? Is that the plan? 3rd CC is already located over there. Reaper goes into the main base. Scouts a couple reinforcements. But the majority of the Terran army in blue right now has moved around. Siege tanks here in the middle of the map. That does mean that this drop over here is maybe going to go in unscouted. Beautiful. Okay, really nicely done right there by HeroMarine, shutting down those medevacs. We don't often see interference matrices being used on medevacs, but you can. You can prevent them from unloading. Now, once again, those units are going to be able to hit the ground, but that certainly shut down that aggression quite nicely. And suddenly, that economical advantage here that uThermal is playing against is going to bite him in the butt, because at this point, 1,000 roughly more a minute for HeroMarine. That means, and that's going to translate, right, into a much bigger army here as time goes by. uThermal knows this, and he decides to now go through the rocks here. I mean, he needs to get some sort of damage done. Sensor tower may have 10% less range, but still enough to see the red blips right there to judge the movement of the opponent. It is so difficult to push into a sieged up Terran army, right? How are you going to pull that off? At this point, we're talking 70 supply for both players, roughly, in army. But HeroMarine is going to be growing faster at this point, plus he's the defender. 3rd command center has just now landed here for uThermal. That's nice. He's finishing up combat shields as well. So at least he's got a small lead in that area, but 1-1 is finishing up momentarily here as well for the biggest of gapes. And even though maybe, well, the combat shields may be a bit behind, there's no denying that this is one hell of a Terran army. I'm starting to get a little bit concerned right now for uThermal. Yeah, his early game did not really work out all too well. Clutch interference matrices. I do think he has to commit here, but now 1-1 is done for the opponent, and he's still fighting into sieged up tanks. Well, the Ravens are coming in from the side, trying to disable as many tanks as possible. 3 of them are indeed shut down, but the same is happening right now in the fight up north here, with uThermal also losing access to a bunch of his own siege tanks. 22 SCVs were just sacrificed for the greater good. That is going to get rid of that worker advantage. But I think the rest of the army here is not going to be able to make their way home. I mean, one siege tank is desperately trying. Terran reinforcements in blue are driving on over in this direction. But suddenly the army supply count here is looking way better for the German. Okay. Not a bad fight, though, for uThermal, all things considered. I mean, you got to do... Oh, okay, well... I was going to say, you got to do something. Losing a medevac full of units, that's not it. Anyhow, that means that HeroMarine indeed ends up winning another ESL Open Cup. Let me just actually look it up real quick. Yeah, that now means that HeroMarine has won 53 of these in total. That's pretty sick.